today talking about hacking assessment. We know that it's been a while since our last weekly check-in, but we reached out and we wanted to give you some time because we knew school started, and we kind of just wanted to make sure this was more of a weekly, monthly check-in now that everybody's working and kind of living in these unpredictable times. So Isaac, tell me a little bit about where you've been and what you've been experiencing down in North Carolina right now.
Yeah, so my wife, right there, Dana, has moved to full virtual teaching as we've had more students or more families rather request to do learning from home. And I think that's a pretty good sign of where we are here, is that, numbers are going up, but school districts and principals and teachers are doing everything they can to keep kids safe and learning. And I can say for all our partners across the country, New York, who just went back to full virtual Tuesday, maybe?
Yeah, this
week. Track the days, yeah. And so many others that they're just doing this heroic work of changing and adapting constantly. But then a lot of the things we talk about in this community are those things that remain the same and that build some consistency in. And I can say overwhelmingly, people who focused on the concepts behind throwing out grades rather, and have looked to gathering evidence and setting goals and self and peer assessment are faring far better because they already have that clarity built in, and the students are so engaged and have so much ownership of their learning. So I really am glad that you're hosting this again, and I know we've got some questions coming in, but just a thank you to all of our community who's done so much to keep kids learning as we survive a pandemic.
Yeah, and you know what? We definitely want to say to everybody too that we know you're struggling. You're struggling. It's near a holiday. Nothing's going to look the way that it normally does this year, and we all have to have each other's backs right now, lift each other up, support each other. And we know that Isaac and I really want to be able to support this community as we always have and want to continue to do so. So I know Jamie had asked a question the other day when I posted if anybody had questions. She specifically spoke to students who were not giving themselves grades that made sense. They were grading themselves higher. And this is certainly something that I know I talk a lot about in hacking assessment and also in teaching students to self-assess, and then also now in the work that we do with the Core Collaborative around impact teams and teaching kids to really know how to assess themselves. And this is also where the grading part of it becomes problematic. We want students to be able to talk about their learning. We want them to be able to identify what they know and can do. And we also want them to be able to identify where they're struggling so that we could better teach them where they need to be taught. And to speak to Jamie's concern about kids not giving themselves representative grades, I always say that we need to throw it back to evidence. And I know that you mentioned in your comment, Jamie, that evidence, you asked them too about evidence. It might make good sense to take a step back and actually kind of coach them through the process a little bit more before you have that conference with them. So if you create a Google form that asks them very targeted questions where they have to answer those questions, which are aligned with the standards and the work that's happening in class. And thank you, whoever said you love my hair. I appreciate it. And then after they filled out the form, kind of go through their responses, and then you'll have a list of questions you could ask them more targeted so that the time you spend with them doing the conference is really a more targeted experience instead of just looking for that overview. And you could also ask them in that form to find evidence of the specific things that they're saying so that by the time they get to you, they already have that evidence there and they don't have to search for it. And I would say delay the in-person or Zoom conference that's face-to-face until you have them fill out that form. Isaac, what might that look like for younger kids who who are doing this self-assessment work?
Yeah, so the ideas are the same, but when we get to, in the upper grades, we call them, by which we mean third, fourth, and fifth, students can engage in that formative assessment process and really, not to self-promote, but the team at the Core Collaborative and Mimi and Todd Press have worked so hard on our new e-toolkit. And I'm really proud to have been a part of it as we continue going. But I will say, as we've tried that out in schools and districts across the country, we've seen that when kids have a predictable approach that they know the teacher is going to work through to launch a task, and then they have exemplars they can see, so they can look for the criteria in those exemplars, regardless of age, that really helps the kids to understand, what exactly am I doing and why does this matter to me? Because I think one of the largest disconnects when we remove people from the same physical space is that sense you have of like, I'm here for you and I'm working with you. And there's that kind of sixth sense we have about the way someone feels about us, and it gets lost sometimes in the screen. But so when we add these extra levels of support, I think that it just gives kids something to stand on. And then all the way to like K1, similar process. It's just that we need more ways for students to interact and show their learning along the way without having to fill out like a Google form or something. So we've had a lot of success with Pear Deck is our favorite, and then Seesaw and Nearpod, so the students can write their example or draw their example or quickly jump on and do a video or use something like Flipgrid. So I think everything you said applies perfectly. It's just that we scaffold things down so that the kids can be a bit more immediate about it and more concrete. But you're right. And then giving a grade in this time, I really think is against our moral purpose as educators, which I know is a strong statement. And I see Paul and Stacy on here, and I have a feeling they'll make some comments on our side on that, because we just, no matter how well we know our students and families, we can't fathom what they might be going through any day, any week, any month. And that's not our job to rate them. Our job is to help them learn.
And I'm so glad you said that, Isaac. And you know how I feel about that. I think one of the biggest struggles, and I know this is so in the teachers throwing out grade group, and I also know that it was true in my classroom, is once you get complete buy-in from the kids that are in your space and you're doing all of these things to make it about the learning and not about the grade, and then when it comes time to actually do a report card and you still have to put a grade on something, it almost is antithetical to the things that you have been trying to really promote. And I know that I definitely pushed back on my principal about it, and I know she wanted more teachers to be able to do it. But being a New York City teacher, the system that New York City uses required that every single teacher fill out their grades for other classes to be able to print report cards, or everybody had to do standards-based, or everybody had to move to some other form. And obviously, if you're in a big school, getting everybody to do the same thing is not always as easy as it sounds. So that is an additional rub, because philosophically, putting the grade on anything goes against what we believe. And I know that after I had spent the 9 years at WJPS and then moved to Long Island City High School, I didn't have the same flexibility. I didn't have the same kind of credibility as I had in that other school that I was in for almost a decade. And starting from scratch with doing the no grades classroom in a school that largely did not support that belief system was really, really challenging. So I can empathize with all of you who are doing this for the first time in systems that aren't so comfortable or happy about the idea of not giving grades and what kind of pushback you're going to get on that. And you will get pushback. You might get less now in the pandemic because, you know, I don't think it's fair to grade kids when you just don't know what's happening in their houses where they're learning. And as a parent, I have to honestly say that I am disheartened
Mm-hmm.
what happens with my son sometimes and
Mm-hmm.
classes, and how inflexible some of his teachers seem to be. I don't care if it's an AP class. I don't care if he's in honors. These are not normal times, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore should not be treated as such. And I'm just
You
reading.
were talking, Monica was sharing, that she philosophically is on the same page, and that, according to her contract, she does have to provide some kind of grade. So I was just kind of asking her, and we'll give her a minute to share, if she does have any kind of lateral movement on that. And then we had a great question too. How can you use reflection to gather SEL metrics?
So I think that's actually an awesome opportunity. Reflection and self-assessment is the way into a student's mind. And as soon as we teach them, and this is another thing we need to explicitly teach them how to do, we want to make sure that they understand that reflection is an opportunity for them to share a number of things about their learning, about their experience, their process. And when we're doing this formative work, the process is as important as the product. And we really need to make sure that that we work so hard to make sure that we know where kids are. So we should be checking in with them emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
Is this work at the right level for them? Are they struggling? How do they know they're struggling? What are they struggling with specifically? And if you have a kid like mine who has lots of anxiety, they don't like asking for help. That's another challenge you're going to come up against is, when I say to Lo, why don't you reach out to your teacher and see what hours she's doing extra help, or if there are resources she can provide you. And he just doesn't want to.
Right.
And reaching out on his behalf all the time when he's in 10th grade seems a little unsavory at this point.
One thing we have to do, since you said it, and I know Paul's out there with us. So, hey, Paul, is that formative assessment is not a product. It's a process, which is very true. And in this SEL, I just threw in the link, the Mood Meter app that we love so much. And now I'm going to get the school wrong. Is that from Stanford? I can't believe I can't remember. It's from one of the many great schools in America. But we've seen some great success using things like this to check in with SEL. And a shout out to Paul Martuccio at the PS13 in District 31. He uses this mood meter, and you can see the app version. It's a free download. But to check in with his staff every time they meet. Sorry. I don't know how to work my phone new update. So I keep getting these alarms to get on this. But at PS13, they use it both with staff. So first, they become aware of their own feelings and emotions, and they also use it with their students as check-ins. And as literacy people, Sarah and I have found it to be really powerful for understanding character, too, because it gives you all these descriptive words. It helps you to understand the range of feelings. And then Paul and I have been doing a lot with lower grades, too, and we found as simple as getting them to use a slide over and over that has a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with different fingers or different levels of battery charging. So use a simple visual, and they maybe drag something on Pear Deck, or they respond in a picture on screen, or whatever it might be, helps them just to take a pause and think for a moment, and then we can help give them those words. But I've found as an adult in our own group in TCC, we always check in, and just the fact that someone asks you is healing. It doesn't even matter if you respond. It doesn't matter if you nail exactly what it is. So it's a little bit of a rambling response, but check out that mood meter and check out the Empowered Learner e-Toolkit, which has some great SEL checks.
I also see that my good friend Principal L is on with us, which is awesome to see you on a Saturday, get new folks in here with us. And Paul, and I saw that Monica has talked about portfolios, and I'm a huge supporter of portfolios, not just in this situation, but in every situation. I think portfolio assessment is the way to go in terms of looking at student learning, because it gives students an opportunity to take ownership of sharing what they think shows their best work, their most improved work, their progress along the way. It embeds reflection in a meaningful way. And it also gives them an opportunity to see their progress because they're tracking, their learning all along the way. Sorry about the noise, folks. And I think it's really empowering for kids to be able to see what their work looked like in September and what it looks like in November and then what it looks like in January. And even though we could tell them we see growth over time, there is nothing more powerful than having the work to lay side by side with other work and see the growth yourself at every age level.
And Monica, I'm going to ask you to email me at isaac@thecorecollaborative.com, and I'm going to send you a copy of a book called Pure Power. And especially I want you to focus on chapter 3. That really breaks down that process for co-construction. And I think it may give you a little bit of structure to help those students come up with those categories and criteria. So just reach out. That's isaac@thecorecollaborative.com, and I'll send you a copy. I've got extras.
Awesome. So I see people jumping in and jumping off here, and we just wanted this check-in today to kind of hear how things, hear how people were going. And if you use the link I put in the comments, you can actually jump on and ask a question if you'd like to. All I would need you to do is make sure you click that link, and we could tell if you clicked it because your face is coming up in our chat, which is different than the one that you're looking at on Facebook or on YouTube. And if there's a specific challenge you're having right now that you would like some help with and you want to problem solve, that's what we're here for. And we love to hear your questions. Of course, Isaac and I can talk about the formative process and not grading forever in our own right, but we want to make sure this is, we want to make sure that this is super useful to those of you who are watching. So if anybody does have a specific question right now, we would love to hear them. Otherwise, we could talk a little bit more about our Empowered Learner Toolkit, which has been where we've been throwing our focus, which is all about teacher and student clarity, making sure that the formative tasks you create are specifically aligned with the standards. The ones we've been working on are literacy standards right now, and designing tasks that really help students deeply understand specific elements of literature, the story, plot structures, different words, different kinds of characters, and we're super proud of the work that we've been doing with that. I just saw that Paul jumped on and asked, what are different ways to set goals with kids remotely? I think that there's always, goal setting is always a really interesting thing. And at the beginning of the year, we're providing a lot of feedback for them. But what we want kids to be able to do is look at success criteria, look at expectations, and be able to determine for themselves what goals they have. And that'll also help us give them better feedback. So Isaac, do you want to talk a little bit about how we help kids set goals in this environment?
One big thing we've seen in a lot of our systems is a shift to freeing up some time in the day for teachers and students to have some smaller groups. Because just last week, I guess I was working with a school and they've got 28, 34 students joining synchronously, which is awesome that all the kids are coming on, but that's in like first grade. And that many young children, you just cannot engage that many kids through the screen. Now you can for a quick mini lesson. So they've been adjusting their schedule so they can build in times for small groups to meet with the teacher. Because really, as Star was talking about earlier, the formative assessment process is a partnership with the child. And so this Empowered Learner e-toolkit we mentioned gives you the structure and gives you resources to do that, because the first step is kids just need to be clear on what it is we expect. And so if we begin with that co-construction that Monica brought up, and we have an exemplar or we have an example, a non-example, and we share those through the screen with students so that we can say, okay, what makes this a strong example? What's missing from this one? Or what can we add to this one to get it up there? Once kids can actually talk about in their own words the criteria, they're usually pretty much ready to start setting a goal. Because at first, in most of my teaching career, I was setting goals like I want to get A's and B's and be a good reader and be good at math and stuff like that. And then we'd set some like kind of goals in there, but the driving goal didn't make any sense. You know, I want to be a good reader.
What does that mean?
Kid. Yeah. So I really think the short version of this answer is we have to have conversations with kids. And to do that, you have to create an allowance in your daily schedule to have small group meetings. And then with that, again, in the toolkit that we've been talking about, you know, we have stoplight rubrics from red, I need the teacher's help. Yellow, I'm getting this, need to practice a little bit more. Green, I've got this, I'm ready to move on. So the kids can look at individual criteria and check. And as our question started this whole conversation with, kids at first are not accurate with that. And it's not because they're cheaters. It's not because they're lazy. It's not because they don't care. It's because we've not grown up in a society that's very reflective based on criteria. So if we give them opportunities to do that, they'll get better because we give them feedback on their self-assessment or on their peer assessment. Say, you know what? I do think you're a great reader, like you said, but let's look back at this and see, do you have any evidence? Or in lower grades sometimes, can you show me an example of how you did this? And when they can't, they'll most often, and I'm talking about 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds too, like we'll just change the response. Oh, well, I guess I don't really have that yet. And other kids will say, I can't do any of this. And you say, well, let's look at your story or you retell and I'll check and let's see. So yeah, it's got to be a conversation and it has to be a process. Day one, I don't care how great you are at this. Star Sexteen goes into class and does this day one. The kids are not going to accurately self-assess, but through the conversations, they'll nail it.
Not in a month, not in 2 months.
Yeah, it takes time.
This is a skill that we do not come into this world as reflective beings in the sense that I can reflect on my learning, my academic process in a meaningful way. And I think, I know I was definitely guilty of this. You tell your kids to reflect, you're going to write a reflection or you're going to talk to me about your learning. And they don't even know what we mean. So we need to give them lots of models. We need to show them how we do it with think alouds. We need to share student samples that match what we want them to be doing. And as Isaac suggested, we really need to make sure that we're giving tons of very specific targeted feedback on what reflection and self-assessment is and what goal setting looks like and what it is not. Like when I used to ask kids, like Isaac said, I want to get an A, I want to do all my work. Those are very great things to want to do, and no one's suggesting you shouldn't want to do them. However, we were thinking something more along the lines of a skill that you might want to work on or specific content you want to deepen your understanding of. And that takes time, and you need to spend time in class with them or in conversation with them, talking about it, not just giving them lots of stuff to do. But really helping them understand why they're doing it and what it can look like.
And if they have those criteria and they understand them well enough, they can talk about them and have a tool they can reference, then the questions K-12 can be as simple as, what did you do well based on the criteria? And what do you want to work on next? Or sometimes in the earliest grades, we'll even just say, what are you proud of? And then we'll help them think about what they can do next. And as simple as those things are, it makes you think back, and then we help them match it to criteria. As you said, it's a process over time.
And even asking them, how do you know? When you ask them, how well did you do on this, or what are you doing well? How do you know you're doing well on it? And hopefully at that point, they have enough clarity and understanding that they've seen exemplars, they've seen various different models, they know different ways of doing things. And in doing that, they have a really deep understanding of and clarity of what success looks like before they get started.
Mm-hmm. And one more thing I'm kind of thinking of, is we've got some videos of this too on our TCC YouTube, on the Core Collaborative YouTube, but having kids use repetitive processes. So we often use glow and grow to get started. A glow is just, what did you do well, like we just said. A grow is, what can you work on next? Having that conversation is so powerful. And then tag, tell what your partner did well. Ask a clarifying question, or ask a question to kind of take your discussion a bit deeper. And then G for tag, give a suggestion, is something that I've seen go great with 5 and 6 year olds. But I also know you often don't need more detail than that, even in AP courses. It's enough to get us talking about the criteria and to set a goal. And if we repeat those processes over and over, it does become kind of automatic. Because it doesn't feel natural.
No, I don't think that this is something that feels natural until you practice doing it a lot and it becomes a part of your practice. Thinking about my lesson planning, for example, looking at it from the teacher's side, and being a reflective person on how well my class lessons were going when I was in class, I would think about those things, and sometimes I feel like, oh, that was really not as good as it could have been. And I would wait till the end of class. And then finally, the reflective element of what I was doing became so great that I could stop a lesson right in the middle, say that it wasn't going the way that I was hoping it would, backtrack together, get feedback from the students, and start over again. So when goal setting and reflection become embedded in our processes, we don't have to wait to be done to reflect on something. We're reflecting all along the way, and we are cognizant of how things are working and how we can improve them throughout the process. And believe it or not, Isaac, we're coming up on half an hour. It goes by so fast. So fast. And we're so grateful that all of you came to with us. And we're kind of hoping that in December, we'll check in again. Hopefully this Saturday time slot is good for folks, and we'll figure out which Saturday in December we're going to do and what the topic will be at that point. We want to know what you're struggling with so we can help you.
And I know we send this out every once in a while, but we've had some others do this, but like people like Monica who are engaged in this work right now and going through the journey, we'd love to have you on, and it'll be the 3 of us. You can take my place and I'll be in the background adding things into the chat because it's so powerful to hear exactly your story and what's happening. So don't be shy about that. If you're willing to be on video, reach out and say, not only do I have some questions, but I want to get on and talk about where I am and what I've done.
Yes, we want to hear from you is essentially it. So thank you all. Hope you have a great Saturday, and we'll be seeing you soon.
Bye, Stacy. I see you on there.